The painting was gone. I stood there in the executive hallway at 11:47 p.m., my intern badge dangling from my neck like a neon sign screaming, "I don't belong here," staring at the empty space on the wall where a Monet should have been. Not a reproduction. Not a print. An actual, honest-to-God, worth more than my entire bloodline Monet. And it had vanished. Hey everyone, it's so good to have you here. Before we dive into this absolute insanity that became my life, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious who's about to go on this wild ride with me. Also, how are you doing today? Seriously, I hope you're having a better week than I was about to have. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this story unfolds, and I've got more coming that'll blow your mind. Now let me tell you how a broke, caffeine-addicted intern like me ended up discovering that her CEO was living a double life that would make Hollywood jealous. My name is Chloe Baxter, and 3 weeks ago, I was just trying to survive my first real job at Meridian Art International, one of those massive, sterile, glass and chrome corporate fortresses in downtown Manhattan where people wore shoes that cost more than my rent. I was 23, drowning in student debt, and living in a shoebox apartment in Brooklyn with a roommate who collected taxidermied animals. Don't ask. I'd taken the internship because, let's be honest, prestigious multinational art company looks fantastic on a resume, even if the actual job involved fetching overpriced lattes, pretending to understand contemporary art theory, and nodding enthusiastically while middle-aged executives mansplained Baroque period techniques to me. My first day had been a masterclass in humiliation. I'd spilled an entire venti caramel macchiato on my thrift store blazer approximately 7 minutes after arriving, tripped over a cable during the morning meeting, face-planting in front of 40 people, and accidentally called our CEO Mr. Johnson, when his name was Jason Ruiz. The worst part? He just smiled at me with these impossibly blue eyes and said, "Don't worry, Chloe. Everyone makes mistakes on their first day." Jason Ruiz. Even his name sounded like it belonged on a movie poster. Tall, probably early 40s, with silver threading through his dark hair in that annoyingly distinguished way that made him look like a professor who moonlighted as a model. He wore expensive suits that fit him like they were sewn onto his body, and he moved through the office with this quiet confidence that made everyone straighten their posture when he walked by. But here's the thing about working in a place where you're essentially invisible: you notice things. I noticed that Jason took calls in his office with the door closed at least 3 times a day, and his assistant was never allowed in during those calls. I noticed that he left the building through the parking garage every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 9:30 p.m., even though his car remained in his reserved spot. I noticed that certain paintings in our extensive collection, pieces that were supposedly on rotating display, would disappear for weeks at a time, only to reappear subtly different. The colors would be slightly off. The brushstrokes wouldn't catch the light the same way. The frames would have microscopic differences that nobody else seemed to notice. Nobody except me, apparently, because I have this annoying habit of actually looking at things instead of just seeing them. For the first 2 weeks, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the paintings were sent out for cleaning or restoration. Maybe I was remembering details wrong. Maybe I was just exhausted from subsisting on instant ramen and the free coffee in the break room that tasted like it had been filtered through an old gym sock. But tonight, I'd stayed late to finish a presentation that my supervisor had dumped on me at 4:55 p.m. with a breezy "have it ready for tomorrow morning." I'd been stress-eating vending machine Cheetos and reorganizing slide decks when I'd heard footsteps in the executive wing. Curiosity killed the cat, right? But satisfaction brought it back, and I was nothing if not fatally curious. I'd crept down the hallway, my worn sneakers silent on the polished marble floors, following the sound of movement coming from the executive gallery, the private collection that only partners and major clients were allowed to access. The door had been slightly ajar, and through the crack, I'd seen him. Jason. He was standing in front of the Monet, Water Lilies at Giverny, worth an estimated $47 million according to the company literature, with a canvas bag at his feet and a small toolkit in his hands. He moved with this practiced precision, carefully removing the painting from the wall, his movement so smooth and efficient it was clear he'd done this 1,000 times before. I'd frozen. My brain had completely short-circuited. Because what I was watching wasn't possible. CEOs didn't steal art. Especially not from their own companies. Especially not art worth more than small countries' GDP. But then he'd done something even more insane. He'd pulled another painting from his bag, an identical Monet, or at least it looked identical from where I was standing, and hung it in place of the original. He'd adjusted it carefully, stepping back to examine his work, then nodded once with satisfaction before sliding the real painting into his bag with a kind of careful reverence usually reserved for newborn babies or unstable explosives. That's when I'd made my mistake. I'd gasped. Out loud. Like an idiot. Jason's head had snapped toward the door, and I'd run. I'd actually run, my heart trying to jackhammer its way out of my chest, my sneakers squeaking on the marble as I'd sprinted back to the intern bullpen, grabbed my backpack, and practically thrown myself into the elevator. I'd gone home, locked my door, and spent the next 6 hours spiraling into an anxiety-induced research hole on my laptop, trying to figure out what the hell I'd just witnessed. Which brought me to tonight, 72 hours later, standing in that same hallway, staring at the empty space where even the forgery was now gone. The Monet had been replaced by a Degas last week. The Degas had lasted 4 days before being swapped with a Renoir. And now the Renoir was just gone. No replacement. Just an empty space and a small brass plaque that read Rotating Collection, currently on loan. On loan. Right. On loan to someone's private collection, probably in some oligarch's yacht or a billionaire's climate-controlled bunker. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of the empty wall, the plaque, everything. I didn't know what I was going to do with the evidence. Go to the police? Tell them what, exactly? Hi, I'm a broke intern, and I think my CEO is an art thief, but I have zero proof, and also he's a pillar of the community, and I'll probably end up arrested for slander. Working late, Chloe. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped my phone. Jason stood at the end of the hallway, hands in his pockets, that same easy smile on his face. He was still in his suit, though he'd loosened his tie, and he looked completely, utterly, infuriatingly calm. Mr. Ruiz. My voice came out 3 octaves too high. I was finishing some work and I was curious about the missing painting. He walked toward me slowly, deliberately, each footstep echoing in the empty corridor. It's being restored. We noticed some deterioration in the varnish layer. Better to be proactive about these things. He stopped about 5 feet away from me, close enough that I could see the tiny lines around his eyes, the almost imperceptible tightness in his smile. Of course, I managed, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. That makes sense. Does it? He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. You know, Chloe, you're very observant. I noticed that about you on your first day. Most interns just go through the motions, but you actually look at things. The way he said it wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. I should get going, I said, trying to edge past him. It's late, and I have that presentation tomorrow. Chloe. His voice stopped me cold. Be careful. Curiosity is a dangerous thing in a place like this. You never know what you might find. He smiled again, but this time there was something dark beneath it, something that made my blood turn to ice. Have a good night, he said pleasantly, then turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the darkness of the executive wing. I stood there for a full minute, my heart racing, my phone clutched in my sweaty hand. Because I just realized something terrifying. Jason knew. He knew that I'd seen him. He knew that I was suspicious. And instead of firing me, instead of threatening me, he just issued the most polite warning I'd ever received. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I looked down at the photos on my phone, the empty wall, the brass plaque, the evidence that meant nothing and everything all at once. I should have walked away. Quit the internship. Forgotten everything I'd seen. But you know what? I've never been good at doing what I should. I deleted the photos, slipped my phone into my pocket, and made a decision that would change my life forever. I was going to figure out exactly what Jason Ruiz was hiding. And God help me, I was going to expose every last secret. The next morning, I showed up to work looking like I'd been hit by a truck driven by insomnia and fueled by paranoia. My roommate Diana, yes, the one with the taxidermy obsession, had taken one look at me shuffling around our kitchen at 6 a.m. and asked if I was coming down with something or finally having that nervous breakdown everyone in their 20s is entitled to. I'd gone with option B, made myself the strongest coffee legally available without a prescription, and headed into Manhattan with a plan that was approximately 30% strategy and 70% sheer delusion. Here's what you need to understand about me. I've never been the girl who plays it safe. My mom used to say I was born asking questions, which is a polite way of saying I was an annoying child who wouldn't accept because I said so as a valid answer. In high school, I'd been the editor of the newspaper who'd exposed the principal's embezzlement scheme. In college, I'd been the student who'd called out a professor for plagiarizing his own students' work. I had this compulsive need to find the truth, even when, especially when, it would have been easier to look the other way. My therapist said it was because my dad walked out when I was 7 without explanation, and I'd spent my entire childhood trying to solve the mystery of why I wasn't enough to make him stay. She said I was looking for closure in all the wrong places, trying to control narratives I had no business controlling. She was probably right. But also, I was still paying off her bills in installments, so maybe I hadn't learned that lesson yet. The point is, walking away from Jason's secret wasn't an option. Not for me. Not when every instinct I had was screaming that something massive was happening right under everyone's noses. I arrived at Meridian Art International at 7:45 a.m., a full hour before my official start time, and made my way to my desk in the intern pit, a sad little corner on the 3rd floor where 6 of us shared space designed for 3 people. My fellow interns were the usual mix, ambitious Ivy League graduates treating this as a stepping stone to their inevitable CEO positions, art school dropouts who actually cared about the work, and me, the scholarship kid from a state school who was just trying not to drown in debt. "You look terrible," said Violet Reed, the intern who sat diagonally from me. She was one of the art school dropouts, perpetually dressed in black, with purple streaks in her hair and an encyclopedic knowledge of 20th century abstract expressionism. "Did you sleep at all?" "Define sleep," I muttered, logging into my computer and pulling up my email. Violet rolled her eyes. "You're going to burn out before month 2. Pace yourself, Baxter. This place isn't worth a mental breakdown." If only she knew. I spent the next 3 hours doing my actual job, organizing files, updating spreadsheets, preparing materials for client presentations, while simultaneously trying to figure out how to investigate a potential art theft ring without, getting fired or arrested or disappeared by a mysterious CEO with unclear moral boundaries. The problem was access. As an intern, I had clearance to exactly 3 floors, none of which included the executive gallery or Jason's private office. The company's digital records were locked behind passwords I didn't have. The security footage was monitored by an actual security team. I couldn't just walk around asking questions without raising suspicion. What I needed was information. Background. Context. So I did what any overeducated millennial would do. I started stalking Jason Ruiz on the internet. His official bio was impressive but vague: MBA from Harvard, 20 years in the art world, known for his innovative approaches to art acquisition and curation. He'd taken over as CEO of Meridian 5 years ago and had since tripled the company's revenue. He sat on the boards of 3 museums, donated generously to arts education programs, and had been featured in Forbes as one of the top 50 most influential figures in contemporary art. He was, by all accounts, a pillar of the community. A success story. A man who made millions of dollars legally and had absolutely zero reason to risk everything by stealing paintings. Which made the whole situation even more insane. I dug deeper, scrolling through news articles, interviews, social media profiles that were professionally maintained and revealed nothing personal. Jason's entire public persona was carefully curated, charming, intelligent, cultured, but fundamentally unknowable. Then I found something interesting. A 6-year-old article from an art industry magazine about a scandal at his previous company, Castellane Galleries in London. There'd been accusations of forged provenance documents, paperwork that proved a painting's ownership history, but the investigation had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. Jason had left the company shortly after, though the article stressed he'd never been formally accused of wrongdoing. Interesting. I was so absorbed in my research that I didn't notice someone standing behind me until they cleared their throat. I slammed my laptop shut so fast I nearly broke my fingers. Jason stood there, coffee cup in hand, wearing another devastating suit, this one charcoal gray with a burgundy tie, and that same easy smile that now felt infinitely more dangerous. "Morning, Chloe," he said pleasantly. "Productive start to your day?" "Just catching up on industry news," I lied, my heart doing that annoying jackhammer thing again. "Staying informed, you know." "Commendable." He glanced at my closed laptop, then back at my face, his blue eyes sharp despite the casual tone. I wanted to follow up on our conversation last night. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable. Not at all, I said, which was absolutely a lie because I'd spent the entire night convinced he was going to have me killed and dumped in the Hudson River. Good. He took a sip of his coffee, completely relaxed, like we were discussing the weather and not the fact that he'd caught me snooping around a crime scene. I value initiative in my employees, Chloe. People who go above and beyond, who notice details others miss. That's rare. Was he complimenting me? Threatening me? Both? Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Jason, he corrected. Mr. Ruiz makes me sound ancient. He paused, studying me with that unnerving intensity. Tell me, what made you want to work in the art world? The question caught me off guard. Honestly? The paycheck. I mean, the art is beautiful and everything, but I needed a job that would help with student loans, and this seemed like a good opportunity. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. Most people probably fed him rehearsed answers about passion and calling. Refreshingly honest. I've been told it's one of my character flaws. Or one of your strengths. He set his coffee cup on the edge of my desk, leaning in slightly. Chloe, I'm going to be direct with you. I'm working on a special project, something that requires discretion, attention to detail, and someone who can think outside the box. I think you might be perfect for it. Every alarm bell in my head started ringing simultaneously. Special project. Nothing sinister, he said with a small laugh, as if he could read my thoughts. I'm curating a private exhibition for some high-profile clients, and I need an assistant who can help with research, logistics, late-night work when necessary. It would mean additional responsibilities, but also additional compensation. Interested. This was a test. It had to be. He was seeing how I'd react, whether I'd take the bait, whether I was brave or stupid enough to get closer to whatever he was hiding. I should have said no. Should have declined politely and gone back to my safe, boring intern tasks. Instead, I heard myself say, I'm interested. Jason smiled, and for just a second, I could have sworn I saw approval in his eyes. Excellent. We'll start tomorrow evening. Meet me in my office at 8 p.m. And Chloe. He picked up his coffee cup. Don't mention this to anyone. The project is confidential, and I need to know you can be discreet. Of course, I said, even as my brain screamed that this was the worst decision I'd ever made. He walked away, disappearing into the elevator bay, leaving me sitting at my desk with my heart racing and my hands trembling. Violet leaned over from her desk. Did Jason Ruiz just personally recruit you for something? Apparently. That's weird. He never interacts with interns directly. You must have impressed him somehow. Yeah. By witnessing him commit a felony. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, oscillating between excitement and terror. Part of me, the rational part, knew I was walking into something dangerous. But the other part, the part that couldn't let mysteries go unsolved, was already planning how to use this opportunity to gather evidence. If Jason wanted to keep me close, fine. I'd get close enough to figure out exactly what he was doing, why he was doing it, and how to stop him. At 6 p.m., I packed up my things and headed for the subway, my mind racing through possibilities. I was so distracted that I almost didn't notice the man following me. Almost. He was in his 30s, wearing a nondescript jacket and jeans, staying about 20 feet behind me as I walked toward the station. When I stopped to check my phone, he stopped too, pretending to look at a storefront window. When I started walking again, he did the same. My mouth went dry. I took a sudden right turn down a side street, and sure enough, he followed. I picked up my pace, my sneakers slapping against the pavement, and ducked into a crowded Starbucks, positioning myself near the back where I could watch the entrance. The man walked past, glanced inside, then kept going. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe he hadn't been following me at all. Maybe I was losing my mind. But as I stood there, breathing hard, gripping my phone like a lifeline, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about stolen paintings anymore. I'd stumbled into something much bigger than art theft. Something that involved surveillance, secrecy, and a CEO who was either the world's most brilliant criminal or the world's most dangerous man. And tomorrow night, I was walking directly into his office. Alone. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note, typing quickly. Asterisk if something happens to me, Investigate Jason Ruiz, CEO of Meridian Art International. Art theft. Forgeries. He knows I know. Asterisk. I saved it, then sent a copy to Diana with a message. If I don't text you by 10 p.m. tomorrow night, open this and go to the police. She responded immediately. Asterisk, are you okay? What's going on? Asterisk. Asterisk, I'll explain later. Just promise me you'll do it. Asterisk. Asterisk, I promise. Be careful. Asterisk. I left Starbucks through a side exit, took 3 different subway lines home, and spent the entire journey looking over my shoulder. That night, I barely slept. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Brooklyn outside my window, sirens, car horns, the distant rumble of the subway, and wondering if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. For the first time since my dad left, since I'd started drowning in student debt and existential dread, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Something bigger than fetching coffee and organizing files. I was going to expose Jason Ruiz. And whatever happened next, at least I'd know I didn't look away. The following evening, I stood outside Jason's office at exactly 7:58 p.m., wearing my most professional outfit, which was really just my least wrinkled blazer and pants that didn't have coffee stains, and trying to convince myself that walking into a potential criminal mastermind's private office was a completely reasonable decision. It wasn't working. The executive floor was eerily quiet. Most employees had left hours ago, and the only sounds were the hum of the HVAC system and my own rapid breathing. Through the frosted glass walls, I could see Jason's silhouette moving around his office, and I realized with mounting dread that we were probably alone on this entire floor. No witnesses. No security cameras in private offices. Just me and a man who knew I'd seen him commit a crime. Great life choices, Chloe. Really stellar. I knocked on the door frame, and Jason's voice called out, "Come in." His office was exactly what you'd expect from a CEO with impeccable taste and unlimited funds. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car, and walls lined with carefully curated artwork. A Picasso sketch hung beside a contemporary piece I didn't recognize. A small sculpture, possibly a Giacometti, sat on a pedestal near his desk. Jason stood by the windows, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking less like a corporate executive and more like someone from a heist movie. He had a tablet in his hands and that focused expression I'd seen when he was stealing the Monet. "Chloe," he said, setting down the tablet. "Right on time. Close the door, please." I did, my palms sweating. The click of the latch felt uncomfortably final. "Have a seat." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk, then grabbed 2 glasses and a bottle of what looked like expensive scotch from a cabinet. "Drink." "I'm 23, I said automatically. "And I'm offering you a drink in a private office after hours. No one's checking IDs." He poured 2 fingers into each glass. "Besides, you look like you need it." He wasn't wrong. I took the glass with a shaky hand and sat down, trying to project confidence I absolutely didn't feel. Jason settled into his chair, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "Tell me, Chloe, what do you know about art forgery?" I nearly choked on my scotch. What? "Art forgery," he repeated calmly. "The creation and sale of fake artwork. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some estimates suggest that up to 20% of artwork in major museums could be forgeries." My brain was screaming at me to lie, to play dumb, to say literally anything except the truth. But Jason was looking at me like he already knew every thought in my head, and I had this sinking feeling that lying would only make things worse. "I know it's illegal," I said carefully. "It is. It's also an art form in itself." He took a sip of his scotch. "The best forgers aren't just copying paintings. They're inhabiting the mind of the original artist. Understanding their technique, their psychology, their vision. It requires extraordinary skill." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 3 nights ago, you saw something you weren't supposed to see." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. "And now we need to have an honest conversation about what happens next." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Chloe." He leaned forward, and I saw something shift in his expression, something dangerous beneath the charm. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've successfully moved over 200 pieces without anyone noticing. Do you really think I don't know when someone's watching me? The room felt like it was tilting. Are you going to kill me? He blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed, like I just told the funniest joke he'd heard all day. Kill you? Christ, no. What kind of monster do you think I am? The kind who steals priceless artwork. Fair point. He finished his scotch and set down the glass. But I have a code, Chloe. I don't hurt people. I don't steal from museums or public institutions. I only target private collectors who acquired their pieces through illegal means, money laundering, tax evasion, exploitation. I'm not a thief. I'm more of a redistributor of ill-gotten gains. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. You're Robin Hood, but for paintings? If you want to be reductive about it, yes. He stood and walked to the windows, hands in his pockets. The art world is corrupt, Chloe. Billionaires hoard masterpieces in climate-controlled vaults as tax shelters, while the public never gets to see them. Criminals use galleries to launder money. Dictators plunder national treasures. I'm just correcting the balance. By stealing and replacing them with forgeries. By liberating them and ensuring the forgeries are good enough that no one notices the difference. The collectors still have their status symbols. The insurance companies don't have to pay out claims. And the real artwork goes where it actually belongs, sometimes back to the countries it was stolen from, sometimes to small museums that could never afford it otherwise, always anonymously. He turned back to face me, and I could see he actually believed this. He wasn't just rationalizing. He genuinely thought he was doing something noble. You're insane, I said. Possibly. He smiled. But I'm also very good at what I do. And right now, I'm offering you a choice. What choice? You can walk away. Quit the internship. Forget everything you saw. I'll write you a glowing recommendation, help you find another position somewhere else, and we'll never speak of this again. He paused. Or you can stay and help me. I laughed, because what else could I do? You want me to help you steal art? I want you to help me research provenance, identify pieces acquired through illegal means, and assist with logistics. You're observant, intelligent, and clearly brave enough, or reckless enough, to investigate something that scared you. Those are exactly the qualities I need. And if I say no? Then you say no. I'm not going to threaten you, Chloe. I'm not going to make your life difficult. You can walk out that door right now, and the only consequence will be that you spend an evening drinking expensive scotch with your CEO. I wanted to believe him. But I'd also seen enough crime dramas to know that witnesses don't just walk away from criminal conspiracies without consequences. Why would you trust me? I asked. I could go straight to the police. You could, he agreed. But you won't. How do you know? Because you've had 3 days to report me, and you're sitting here instead. Because you researched my background instead of calling the authorities. Because despite being terrified, you're also fascinated. He sat on the edge of his desk, closer now. You want to know how deep this goes. You want to understand why I'm doing this. You want to solve the mystery. Damn it. He was right. This is crazy, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. It is, Jason agreed. But tell me something, Chloe. When was the last time you felt truly alive? When was the last time you did something that actually mattered, instead of just surviving? The question hit harder than it should have. Because the truth was, I couldn't remember. My entire adult life had been an exhausting cycle of debt, dead-end jobs, and existential dread. I'd been treading water for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to actually swim. I need to think about it, I said finally. Of course. Jason stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a folder. Take this. It's research on our next target, a collector named Vincent Harmon. Real estate mogul, suspected of using art purchases to launder money from overseas clients. He has a Vermeer that was stolen from a Dutch museum during World War II and never returned. Read through it. If you decide you want in, meet me here tomorrow night. If not, leave the folder on your desk and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. He handed me the folder, and I took it with numb fingers. One more thing, Jason said as I stood to leave. That man who followed you yesterday? He wasn't one of mine. Which means someone else is watching this company. So whether you help me or not, Chloe, you might already be in danger just by knowing what you know. The blood drained from my face. What? I've made enemies in this world. People who'd love to expose me, or worse, who'd love to take over my operation. If they think you're involved with me, they might come after you. So think carefully about your next move, because walking away might not be as safe as you think. I stood there, clutching the folder, my mind reeling. This had escalated from art theft to actual danger so quickly I couldn't process it. Get home safely, Jason said, his tone almost gentle. And Chloe? For what it's worth, I hope you say yes. I think we could do great things together. I left his office in a daze, rode the elevator down to the lobby, and stepped out into the cool Manhattan night. The folder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my bag. I should go to the police. I should report everything and let them handle it. But as I walked toward the subway, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. * stay away from Ruiz. He's dangerous. This is your only warning. *. My hands shook as I looked around the street, but I couldn't see anyone watching me. The crowds moved past, oblivious, and I felt utterly terrifyingly alone. I'd wanted answers. I'd wanted to solve the mystery. Well, congratulations, Chloe. Now you're part of it. I went home, locked every door and window in our apartment, and spent the next 3 hours reading through Jason's folder. And what I found there changed everything. Vincent Harmon wasn't just a corrupt real estate mogul. He was connected to organized crime, illegal weapons trading, and a network of shell companies that stretched across 3 continents. The Vermeer in his collection, Girl with a Pearl Earring by Johannes Vermeer, estimated value over $200 million, had been stolen by Nazis in 1943 and had disappeared into private collections for decades. Jason had documentation. Provenance records. Photographs of Harmon with known criminals. Evidence that would normally take investigators years to compile. And at the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note. * This painting belongs in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Help me return it. * I sat there on my bed, surrounded by documents, and realized that Jason wasn't just stealing art for profit or thrills. He was actually trying to make things right. The question was, did that make him a hero or just a very sophisticated criminal? And more importantly, was I brave enough, or stupid enough, to find out? I looked at my phone, at that threatening text message, and made my decision. Tomorrow night, I was going back to Jason's office. Not because I trusted him. Not because I thought what he was doing was right. But because someone had threatened me, and I'd be damned if I was going to run away scared. If I was already in danger, I might as well figure out what the hell was actually going on. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to bring down Jason's entire operation from the inside. Or I'd end up as an accomplice to one of the most audacious art heists in history. Either way, my boring intern life was officially over. The next evening, I walked into Jason's office with the folder under my arm and approximately 0% confidence in my decision-making abilities. He looked up from his computer, and something like relief crossed his face. You came back. Against my better judgment, I said, setting the folder on his desk. I read everything. Vincent Harmon is a piece of work. That's putting it mildly. Jason stood and walked to a large digital screen mounted on his wall, tapping it to life. A floor plan appeared, Harmon's penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side. He's hosting a charity gala next Saturday. 200 guests, full catering staff, security everywhere. It's the perfect chaos to move the painting. I stared at the screen, my stomach doing somersaults. You're going to steal it during a party? I'm going to liberate it during a party, he corrected with a slight smile. And yes, it's bold, but that's precisely why it'll work. Everyone will be focused on the event, not on checking whether the Vermeer in Harmon's private study is authentic. This is insane. You've mentioned that before. He pulled up another image, the painting itself, a hauntingly beautiful portrait of a young woman with luminous eyes and that famous pearl earring. This has been missing from public view for 80 years, Chloe. It belongs in a museum where millions of people can see it, not locked in some criminal's private collection. He wasn't wrong. But he also wasn't exactly right. So what's my role in this insanity? I asked. Jason's smile widened. I need you to get us into the gala. How? I'm a broke intern. I don't exactly run in the same social circles as billionaire real estate moguls. No, but Meridian Art International does. Harmon is one of our consulting clients. We advise him on acquisitions. Jason pulled up a guest list. I've already secured 2 invitations, one for me, one for my +1. You'll pose as my assistant, there to discuss a potential acquisition. It's the perfect cover. You want me to attend a high society charity gala and help you commit a felony. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad. It's necessary, Jason said, his tone turning serious. Look, I understand your hesitation. This goes against everything you've been taught about right and wrong. But the world isn't black and white, Chloe. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. I wanted to argue, but part of me, the part that had spent hours reading about Harmon's crimes, about how this painting had been stolen from its rightful owners, understood what he meant. Fine, I heard myself say. But I have conditions. Jason raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. First, no one gets hurt. If anything goes wrong, we abort. Second, I want proof that the painting actually goes to the museum afterward. And third. I hesitated. I want to know why you really do this. The Robin Hood speech was nice, but there's more to it. I can tell. Something flickered in Jason's eyes. Pain maybe, or old anger. Fair enough. But that conversation happens after the job. Deal. I should have pushed harder. Should have demanded answers up front. But I was already in too deep, and we both knew it. Deal. The next 5 days were the strangest of my life. By day, I maintained my normal intern routine, fetching coffee, organizing files, pretending to care about quarterly reports. By night, I met Jason in his office where he taught me everything I needed to know about high-stakes art theft. How to read a room for security cameras. How to identify pressure sensors on frames. How to move through a crowd without drawing attention. How to speak the language of wealthy collectors so convincingly that no one would question my presence. You're a natural, Jason said on Thursday night after I'd successfully picked a practice lock in under 2 minutes. Most people freeze under pressure. You get sharper. Years of customer service jobs, I said, returning his tools to their case. You learn to think fast when someone's screaming at you about their latte. He laughed, and for a moment, he seemed less like a criminal mastermind and more like a normal person. Tell me something, Chloe. What would you be doing if you weren't here? Probably watching Netflix in my apartment, eating cereal for dinner, and contemplating the meaninglessness of existence. Sounds delightful. It's a vibe. I sat back in my chair. What about you? If you weren't stealing art, what would you be doing? His expression darkened. Probably dead or in prison. This life, what I do, it's the only thing that's kept me sane. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. We have a problem. What kind of problem? He turned his screen toward me. It was a security alert from Harmon's building. Enhanced security measures had just been implemented. Additional cameras, extra guards, new access protocols. Someone tipped him off, Jason said quietly. Someone knows we're coming. My blood ran cold. The person who texted me. Most likely. He started pacing, his mind clearly racing through contingencies. This changes things. We need to adjust the plan, add redundancies, prepare for complications. Or we could just not do it, I suggested. If someone's onto us. Then they're onto us whether we proceed or not, Jason interrupted. And backing down now would show weakness. In this world, Chloe, weakness gets you killed. The casual way he said it made my skin crawl. Has anyone ever died because of what you do? No. He stopped pacing and looked at me directly. And I intend to keep it that way. Which is why we're going to be smarter than whoever's trying to stop us. Friday night, Jason took me to a boutique in Soho where a woman named Isabel, who definitely knew way too much about his business, fitted me for a gown that cost more than 3 months of my rent. You clean up well, Jason said when I emerged from the dressing room in a midnight blue dress that made me feel like a different person entirely. I feel ridiculous. You look perfect. Tomorrow night, you won't be Chloe Baxter, broke Intern. You'll be Chloe Baxter, Junior Acquisition Specialist for one of the most prestigious art companies in the world. Own it. Isabel handed me a pair of heels that were definitely designed by someone who hated women. And practice walking in these. You'll need to move quickly if things go wrong. Comforting, I muttered. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Diana had asked 3 times if I was okay, and I'd lied 3 times, saying everything was fine. My phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Asterisk last chance. Walk away. Asterisk. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. Who is this? No response. Just those 3 ominous words hanging in the air. I should have been terrified. Should have called the police. Should have done literally anything except what I was about to do. Instead, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like the universe mocking my life choices. I spent the morning mentally preparing, the afternoon getting ready, and the early evening having a minor panic attack in my bathroom while Diana pounded on the door asking if I needed medical attention. I'm fine. I called out, splashing cold water on my face. Just nervous about this work thing. You're going to a gala with your CEO. That's not a work thing, that's a potential HR violation. If only she knew. Jason picked me up at 7 p.m. in a town car, looking devastating in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my student loans. He handed me a small earpiece as I slid into the back seat. Communication device, he explained. If we get separated, I can guide you. And if anything goes wrong, I'll tell you to abort. Has anything ever gone wrong before? Once. But I learned from it. He didn't elaborate, and I decided I didn't want to know. The drive to Harmon's building took 20 minutes, but it felt like 20 seconds. My heart was racing, my palms were sweating, and I was 90% sure I was going to throw up in this very expensive dress. Breathe, Jason said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You've got this. Just follow my lead, smile at the right people, and trust your instincts. My instincts are telling me to run. Then trust my instincts. The car pulled up to a building that looked like it cost more than a small country. A red carpet led to the entrance, flanked by security guards checking invitations and scanning guests with metal detectors. Jason helped me out of the car, and suddenly we were part of the crowd, wealthy Manhattan elite in their designer gowns and tuxedos, dripping with jewelry and entitlement. Showtime, Jason murmured, offering me his arm. I took it, lifted my chin, and became someone else entirely. The security checkpoint was surprisingly easy. Jason's invitation was legitimate, and his charm worked on the guards like a superpower. They waved us through with barely a glance. Inside, the penthouse was obscene in its luxury. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, waiters circulating with champagne and caviar. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewel box. And everywhere, everywhere, there was art. Paintings lined the walls, sculptures occupied pedestals, installations dominated corners. It was less a home and more a museum for one man's ego. The study is on the 3rd floor, Jason said quietly, accepting 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and handing me one. East wing. We'll need to slip away during the auction portion of the evening. When's that? 9 p.m. We have an hour to blend in, establish our presence, and prepare. For the next 60 minutes, I did the best acting of my life. I smiled at strangers, made small talk about contemporary art markets, laughed at terrible jokes from middle-aged men who looked at me like I was another acquisition to be made. Jason stayed close, introducing me as his brilliant young associate, and spinning stories about fictional art deals that sounded completely legitimate. He was so smooth, so confident, that I almost forgot we were there to commit a crime. Almost. At 8:45, I excused myself to use the restroom, as planned. Jason would create a distraction during the auction, and I would slip upstairs to the study where I'd disable the painting's security system, a simple electromagnetic lock that Jason had taught me to bypass. Simple. Right. I made my way through the crowds, up a marble staircase to the 2nd floor, then found the service stairs that led to the third. My heels clicked on the steps, too loud, and I kicked them off, carrying them as I climbed. The third floor was quieter, dimly lit, clearly off-limits to guests. My heart pounded as I moved down the hallway, counting doors until I found the study. The door was locked, but Jason had given me a keycard. Don't ask how he got it. That clicked it open. Inside, the study was smaller than I expected, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk. And there, on the far wall, illuminated by subtle track lighting, was the Vermeer. It was breathtaking. Even knowing it was stolen, knowing the evil behind its current owner, I couldn't help but be moved by its beauty. "Focus, Chloe," I whispered to myself. I approached the painting, examining the frame. There, a small panel with a biometric scanner. I pulled out the bypass device Jason had given me, attached it to the scanner, and watched as it worked through thousands of combinations. 15 seconds. 30. 45. Come on, come on. Click. The panel turned green. The electromagnetic lock disengaged. I'd done it. I pressed my earpiece. "Jason, I'm in." Locks disabled. Static crackled, then his voice. "Good. I'm creating the distraction now. You have 5 minutes to swap the paintings." I carefully lifted the Vermeer from the wall, it was heavier than I expected, and set it aside. Jason had hidden the forgery behind a false panel in Harmon's bookshelf yesterday during a consulting visit. I found it, retrieved it, and hung it in place of the original. 4 minutes. I was sliding the real Vermeer into the protective case we'd hidden when I heard voices in the hallway. "Shit. Told you I saw someone come up here," a man's voice said. "Probably just a guest looking for a bathroom," another replied. "Harmon said no one comes to the third floor. We need to check." I looked around frantically. The window? 3 stories up. The closet? Too obvious. Under the desk? Not enough room. The voices were getting closer. "Jason," I whispered urgently into the earpiece. "We have a problem. Security's coming. Hide. Now. I'm on my way." The door handle started to turn. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the Vermeer case, dove behind the floor-length curtains by the window, and held my breath. The door opened. Footsteps entered the room. "See? Nothing," one guard said. "Check behind the desk." Oh God. I pressed myself against the wall, the painting case clutched to my chest, and prayed they wouldn't look behind the curtains. More footsteps. A drawer opening. Something being moved. Then from somewhere downstairs, a loud crash and screams. "What the hell was that?" one guard said. "Come on, we need to check it out." They ran from the room, leaving the door open. I waited 10 seconds, the longest 10 seconds of my life, then emerged from behind the curtains. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the case. "Jason." I whispered into the earpiece. "Kitchen. Fire alarm. Get out now while everyone's distracted." I moved as fast as I could, case in hand, back through the hallway and down the service stairs. On the second floor, I could hear chaos, guests evacuating, staff running, alarms blaring. I made it to the main floor and slipped into the crowd being ushered outside. The cool night air hit my face, and I realized I was still barefoot, still clutching a case containing a $200 million painting. Jason appeared at my elbow, taking the case smoothly and tucking it under his arm like it was a briefcase. "Walk, don't run. We're just 2 guests evacuating with everyone else." We made it to the street, where fire trucks were already arriving. The crowd was confused, annoyed, but not suspicious. Just another false alarm at another billionaire's party. Our car pulled up, and we slid inside. "Drive," Jason told the driver calmly. As we pulled away from the curb, I finally allowed myself to breathe. "We did it," I whispered. "We did." Jason looked at me with something like pride. "You were incredible under pressure. I almost had a heart attack. But you didn't. You adapted. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals." The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaky and exhausted. "What now?" "Now we get this to a secure location, verify its authenticity, and begin the process of returning it to Amsterdam." He paused. "And now I tell you the truth about why I do this." I turned to look at him, and in the dim light of the car, I saw real emotion on his face. Grief, anger, determination. My sister was an art restorer, he said quietly. 10 years ago, she uncovered a forgery ring operating out of the gallery where she worked. She tried to expose it, and they killed her. Made it look like an accident. The people responsible were never caught because they had too much money, too much power. My breath caught. Jason. I started this to finish what she started. To take back what was stolen. To make sure that the people who profit from corruption don't get to keep their treasures while the rest of the world suffers. He looked at me. I can't bring her back. But I can make sure her death meant something. Suddenly, everything made sense. The code. The careful selection of targets. The obsessive precision. This wasn't about money or thrills. This was about justice. And somehow, impossibly, I'd become part of it. The safe house was in Brooklyn, tucked between a bodega and a laundromat in a neighborhood where nobody asked questions. Jason led me up 3 flights of narrow stairs to an apartment that looked ordinary from the outside but was anything but inside. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, documents, a conspiracy theorist's dream wall, except everything here was real. I recognized some of the paintings from Meridian's collection, their locations marked with red pins. Others I'd never seen, tagged with names like Recovered Prague Museum and Returned Cairo National Gallery. This is your operation, I breathed, taking it all in. 5 years of work. Jason set the case containing the Vermeer on a work table and began unpacking specialized equipment, UV lights, magnifying instruments, chemical analysis tools. Every piece I've moved. Every corrupt collector I've targeted. It's all here. I moved closer to the wall, reading the notes. Vincent Harmon's file was thick, dozens of pages detailing his connections to money laundering operations, illegal weapons deals, and art acquired through dubious means. But he wasn't alone. There were at least 30 other names, each with their own web of crimes. How did you compile all this? I asked. Years of investigation. My sister left behind research, names, connections, patterns. I built on it, expanded it, turned it into something she would have been proud of. He looked up from his examination of the painting. Come here. I want to show you something. I approached the work table where he'd positioned the Vermeer under ultraviolet light. The painting seemed to glow, revealing brushstrokes invisible to the naked eye, the artist's hand reaching across centuries. It's authentic, Jason said, his voice reverent. Every analysis confirms it. This is the real painting, stolen in 1943 and hidden in private collections ever since. And now it's going home. When? I asked. 2 weeks. I have contacts in Amsterdam who'll coordinate with the Rijksmuseum. They'll discover it in their archives, claim it was mislabeled and forgotten. No one will question the provenance because no one wants to admit how much stolen art circulates in the legitimate market. I watched him work, this man who'd built an entire shadow operation to correct injustices that the legal system ignored. Your sister would be proud of you. Something in his expression cracked. Would she? I've broken dozens of laws, lied to hundreds of people, risked everything for a mission she never asked me to complete. Sometimes I wonder if I'm honoring her memory or just using it to justify my own anger. Maybe it's both, I said. Maybe that's okay. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw vulnerability beneath the confident exterior. When she died, I was finishing my MBA at Harvard. I had job offers from every major financial firm in New York. I was supposed to have a normal life, corner office, expensive apartment, conventional success. Instead, I became this. A thief with a conscience. A man who couldn't let go. He turned back to the painting. After her death, I investigated the gallery where she worked. Found evidence of the forgery ring, connections to organized crime, payoffs to local officials. I took everything to the police, and you know what they said? Insufficient evidence. We can't move forward. So you decided to take matters into your own hands. I decided to fight fire with fire. If the system wouldn't punish these people, I'd do it myself. I learned everything: art history, forgery techniques, security systems, criminal networks. I built an identity as a legitimate art dealer, worked my way up to CEO of Meridian, and used my position to access the world I needed to infiltrate. The scope of it was staggering. How many people know what you really do? 3. My forger, my art authenticator, and my logistics coordinator. Everyone else thinks I'm exactly what I appear to be, a successful CEO with a passion for art. He paused. Until you. Why did you tell me? I asked. You could have let me walk away. Could have scared me off or paid me off. Why bring me into this? Jason was quiet for a moment, cleaning his equipment with methodical precision. Because you reminded me of her. My sister, she had this quality you have. She couldn't ignore injustice. Couldn't pretend she didn't see what was wrong with the world. It got her killed, but it also made her the best person I ever knew. His words hit me harder than I expected. I'm not that brave. You're here, aren't you? He met my eyes. After I warned you away, after someone threatened you, after you had every reason to run, you're still here. That's not bravery. That's something more important. That's character. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. We have a problem. Another one? He showed me the screen, a news alert. The headline made my blood run cold. Fire at Meridian Art International Headquarters. Authorities investigating possible arson. Oh my God, I whispered. Jason was already moving, pulling up security feeds on his laptop. The footage showed smoke pouring from the executive floors, fire trucks surrounding the building, and, my stomach dropped, police cars. Lots of them. This isn't about the fire, Jason said grimly. This is a raid. Someone's using the fire as cover to get access to the building, to my files, to everything. The person who's been watching us. Has to be. He was typing rapidly, accessing secure servers, downloading files. They're trying to expose the operation, but they're doing it wrong. If they go public with this without understanding the full scope, they'll destroy 5 years of work and ensure that every corrupt collector we've targeted gets away clean. What do we do? Jason looked at me, and I saw calculation in his eyes. We have 2 options. We can run, abandon everything, disappear, and hope they don't find us. Or we can fight back. Expose them before they expose us. Who are they? I have a theory. He pulled up a file on his laptop, photographs of a man in his 50s with silver hair and calculating eyes. Maxwell Sterling. He runs a private security firm that specializes in protecting high-value art collections. He's also corrupt as hell, takes kickbacks from collectors, helps them hide stolen pieces, facilitates illegal transactions. You've targeted his clients, I realized. Extensively. He's lost millions in fees because pieces under his protection keep disappearing. He's been investigating me for months, and now he's making his move. Jason closed the laptop. If he exposes my operation publicly, the scandal will bury Meridian, destroy my credibility, and ensure that every corrupt collector knows to tighten their security. The paintings I've recovered will be the last ones I ever touch. But if we expose him first, we prove that he's the real criminal, that his entire operation is built on protecting stolen art and enabling corruption. We turn the narrative around before he can destroy everything. I looked at the wall covered with evidence, at the painting sitting on the work table, at 5 years of Jason's life condensed into one apartment. How do we do that? Jason smiled, but there was darkness in it. The same way we do everything else. We steal something he values, and we use it against him. What does he value? His reputation. His legitimacy. His carefully constructed image as a pillar of the art security community. Jason pulled up another file, this one detailing Sterling's company, his clients, his operations. He's hosting an industry conference next week. Every major player in art security will be there. If we can get inside, access his private server, and download proof of his criminal activities, we can release it at the conference. Destroy him in front of his peers. That's insane, I said, but I was already thinking through the logistics. It's necessary. And Chloe. He looked at me seriously. This is different from stealing a painting. We're going after someone who knows what we do, who's actively hunting us. If we fail, we don't just lose the operation. We lose everything. Prison time, criminal records, our lives as we know them. I should have been terrified. Should have said no, walked away, let him handle it alone. Instead, I heard myself say, "When do we start planning?" Jason's smile turned genuine. "Right now." We spent the next 3 hours strategizing, mapping out Sterling's security conference, identifying vulnerabilities, and building a plan that was equal parts brilliant and suicidal. At 2 a.m., Jason ordered Thai food. Apparently even art thieves get hungry, and we ate straight from the containers while surrounded by documents and conspiracy walls. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, twirling pad thai around my fork. "Depends on how personal." "Why haven't you ever been caught?" "In 5 years, not once." Jason considered the question. "Partly luck. Partly preparation. Mostly because I don't get greedy. I take what I came for and nothing more. I don't sell pieces for profit. I don't brag about my work. I stay invisible, which means nobody's looking for me." "Until now." "Until now," he agreed. "Sterling's different. He's motivated not by justice, but by revenge. He wants to hurt me, which makes him dangerous and unpredictable." "Are you scared?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Terrified. But fear is useful. It keeps you sharp, keeps you from making stupid mistakes. The day I stop being afraid is the day I'll get caught." I appreciated his honesty. Most people, especially men with his kind of confidence, wouldn't admit to fear. For what it's worth, I'm terrified too. But I'm also... I searched for the word. Alive. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. "That's the addiction," Jason said with a slight smile. "The adrenaline, the purpose, the sense that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. It's intoxicating." "Is that why you've done this for 5 years? The addiction?" "No." His expression turned serious. "I do it because my sister deserved justice. Because the people I target deserve consequences. Because someone has to care when the system fails." He paused. "But yes, there's an element of addiction. The rush of a successful job, the satisfaction of returning stolen art to its rightful place. It's powerful. Dangerous, even. Will you ever stop?" "I don't know. Maybe when I've recovered every piece my sister identified. Maybe when the corrupt collectors are all exposed. Maybe never." He looked at me. "What about you? After this is over, assuming we survive, what will you do?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. My entire life had been about survival, about getting through each day without drowning. The idea of actually having choices, having purpose beyond just existing, was foreign. "I guess it depends on whether I'm in prison or not," I said with dark humor. Jason laughed. "Fair point. But seriously, Chloe. You're smart, capable, and apparently have a talent for high-stakes art theft. The world is open to you." "I think I'd like to finish my degree," I said slowly. "Maybe do something in art history or museum curation. Something legitimate, where I can actually help preserve and protect artwork the legal way." "That's a good goal. Noble, even. What about you? If you could do anything, be anyone, what would you choose?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'd be someone my sister would recognize. Someone she'd be proud of, not because of what I've accomplished, but because of who I am." Somewhere along the way, I lost track of the difference. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. "Jason, everything you've done, it's been for her. That counts for something." Does it? Or have I just been running from grief for 5 years, convincing myself that revenge is the same as healing? I didn't have an answer. The truth was, I didn't know if what Jason was doing was right or wrong. It existed in some moral gray area that defied easy categorization. "Maybe healing isn't the goal," I said finally. "Maybe it's just about honoring the people we've lost, in whatever way we can." Jason looked at me with something like gratitude. "You're wise beyond your years, Chloe Baxter." I'm a broke intern eating Thai food in a safe house at 2 a.m. while planning to commit corporate espionage. I'm not sure wise is the word. He laughed, and for a moment, the weight of everything lifted. We were just 2 people, sharing a meal, connected by circumstances neither of us could have predicted. But the moment didn't last. Jason's phone buzzed again, another alert. This time, His expression shifted from concern to alarm. "What?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. It was a message, sender unknown. "I know about the Vermeer. I know about Brooklyn. I know about Chloe Baxter. End this now, or everyone learns the truth." My hands started shaking. "They know where we are." "Not yet." Jason was already moving, gathering equipment, erasing the digital traces of our presence. "But they're close. We need to move the painting, secure the evidence, and accelerate our timeline." "Accelerate how much?" "The conference is in 4 days. We strike then, or we don't strike at all." 4 days. 4 days to plan and execute the most dangerous job of Jason's career, against an enemy who knew we were coming. I looked at the Vermeer, at the wall of evidence, at Jason's face set with determination. And I made my choice. "Then we'd better get to work," I said. Jason smiled. "Fierce, dangerous, alive. Welcome to the deep end, Chloe. Try not to drown." The conference was at the Grandview Hotel in Midtown, a gleaming fortress of glass and steel where the world's most powerful art security professionals gathered annually to network, share strategies, and pretend they weren't all protecting stolen goods for billionaires. We had 2 days left to finalize our plan when everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at 6 a.m. I was crashed on the safe house couch, having spent another night knee-deep in Sterling's files, when Jason's phone rang. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and went completely pale. "What?" I asked, sitting up. He ended the call and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before: fear. "They arrested my forger," he said. "Federal agents, this morning. They're charging him with conspiracy to commit fraud, art forgery, and a dozen other counts." My stomach dropped. "Does he know about?" "Everything. He knows about me, the operation, the safe house, the Vermeer. Everything." Jason started pacing, running his hands through his hair. "If he talks, and he will talk, they always talk, we have hours, maybe less, before they come for us. What do we do?" "We run. Right now." He was already grabbing equipment, stuffing files into a bag. "We abandon the Sterling plan, secure the Vermeer somewhere they can't find it, and disappear until this blows over." "But what about exposing Sterling? What about everything you've built?" "It's over, Chloe." His voice cracked with desperation. 5 years of work, destroyed because I got careless. Because I trusted the wrong person. Because I brought you into this and put you in danger. Stop." I stood up, forcing him to look at me. "You didn't get careless. Sterling targeted your operation strategically. He found your weakest link and exploited it. This isn't your fault." "It is my fault. All of it." He sank into a chair, and for the first time since I'd met him, Jason Ruiz looked defeated. "My sister died because she tried to expose corruption. I've spent 5 years trying to honor her memory, and all I've done is create more victims. My forger will go to prison. You could go to prison. And for what? A few paintings returned to museums? It's not worth it." I'd never seen him like this, broken, hopeless, consumed by guilt. The confident mastermind was gone, replaced by a man drowning in grief and regret. "Jason. You should go," he said quietly. "Right now. Walk away, delete my contact information, and pretend you never met me. I'll handle this alone. I'll take full responsibility. You can tell them I coerced you, that you were just an intern following orders." "I'm not leaving." "Chloe." I said I'm not leaving. My voice was louder than I intended. "You think I've come this far, risked this much, just to abandon you when things get hard? That's not who I am. You barely know me. You owe me nothing." "Maybe not. But I owe it to myself to finish what we started." I moved closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Your sister fought for what was right, even when it was dangerous. You've spent 5 years doing the same. I'm not going to let that end because one person got arrested. They'll come for you too. Then let them come. But we're not running. We're finishing this." Jason stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression: surprise, gratitude, maybe even admiration. "You're insane." "I learned from the best." He almost smiled. Almost. But then his phone buzzed again, and whatever hope had flickered in his eyes died. He read the message and his jaw tightened. Sterling just sent this to every major art publication and law enforcement agency. He showed me the screen. It was a press release, professionally formatted, devastating in its detail. Exclusive, CEO of Meridian Art International exposed as leader of international art theft ring. The article outlined everything: 5 years of thefts, the forgery operation, even details about specific paintings Jason had moved. It named him directly, included photographs of the safe house, and claimed to have testimony from confidential sources confirming his guilt. "He's destroying you publicly," I whispered. "He's ensuring that even if I'm not convicted, I'm ruined. No one will trust me. No museum will accept donations from me. Every painting I've returned will be questioned. The corrupt collectors I targeted will use this to claim they're the real victims." Jason set down his phone. "He's won." The hopelessness in his voice was unbearable. "There has to be something we can do." "There isn't. He has evidence, testimony, documentation. Even if we expose his corruption, it won't matter. The narrative is already set. I'm the villain, and he's the hero who stopped me." I looked around the safe house. 5 years of work reduced to evidence in a coming prosecution. The wall of photographs and documents that represented Jason's entire mission. The Vermeer sitting on the work table, a masterpiece that might now never make it home. What about the conference? I asked desperately. We still have access. We could still. It's suicide, Jason interrupted. Sterling knows we're coming. He'll have security waiting. We'd be arrested the moment we walked through the door. So that's it? We just give up. We accept reality. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at Brooklyn's morning light. I'm calling my lawyer. I'll turn myself in, cooperate with authorities, try to minimize the damage. You should do the same. Get ahead of this before they come for you. Every instinct I had screamed that this was wrong. That giving up meant Sterling won, meant every corrupt collector Jason had targeted would keep their stolen art, meant his sister's death truly meant nothing. But Jason was right about one thing: we were out of options. Or were we? An idea formed in my mind, reckless, dangerous, probably stupid. But it was something. What if we don't go to the conference to steal data? I said slowly. What if we go to confess? Jason turned to look at me. What? Think about it. Sterling's press release paints you as a villain. Every major player in art security will be at that conference, reading his version of events. But what if you showed up and told your version? What if you explained everything? Your sister, the corrupt collectors, the paintings you returned. What if you exposed Sterling's operation in front of everyone? They'd arrest me on the spot. Probably. But you'd control the narrative. You'd make sure people understand why you did what you did. And if we time it right, if we release all your evidence simultaneously to the press, to museums, to law enforcement, Sterling's corruption gets exposed at the same moment. He can't bury it if it's already public. Jason was quiet, processing. That's not a plan. That's a suicide mission with extra steps. It's the only move Sterling won't expect. He thinks we're running. He thinks you're hiding. Showing up and confessing throws his entire strategy into chaos. And lands me in prison for years. Maybe, I admitted. But at least your work continues. At least the truth comes out. At least you're not running from your sister's legacy anymore. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're actually serious about this? Completely. Chloe, if we do this, if I confess publicly, you go down too. You were part of the Harmon heist. You'd face charges as an accomplice. I know. You could lose everything. Your future, your freedom, your entire life. I know that too. I took a deep breath. But I'd rather lose everything fighting for something that matters than spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. Jason looked at me for a long moment, and I saw emotions warring on his face: despair, hope, resignation, determination. Finally he laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. You're absolutely insane, he said. Is that a yes? He picked up his phone, pulled up Sterling's press release, and read it again. Then he looked at the wall of evidence, at 5 years of his life condensed into one apartment. My sister used to say that the only way to fight monsters is to refuse to become one yourself. That even if you lose, even if you go down fighting, at least you went down standing for something. He met my eyes. I think she would have liked you. So we're doing this. Jason's smile was fierce, reckless, and completely alive. We're doing this. But on one condition. What? If this goes south, when this goes south, you let me take full responsibility. You were a naive intern who got manipulated by her boss. You cooperated under duress. You're the victim here. That's a lie. It's a story that keeps you out of prison. He moved closer, and his expression softened. Chloe, I've already lost my sister. I've already destroyed my own life. I won't destroy yours too. The emotion in his voice made my throat tight. We'll figure it out. Together. Together, he echoed. Okay. Then let's plan the most spectacular public confession in art theft history. We spent the next 48 hours preparing. Jason compiled every piece of evidence he had on Sterling, documentation of corrupt deals, proof of Sterling's protection of stolen art, testimony from anonymous sources within his company. We packaged it all into an airtight case and set up automated releases to major news outlets, law enforcement agencies, and art publications, timed to go live the moment Jason began his confession. Meanwhile, I practiced my own statement, the truth about how I discovered Jason's operation, why I'd chosen to help, and what I'd learned about corruption in the art world. It wasn't a defense. It was a testimony. The night before the conference, we sat in the safe house one last time, surrounded by evidence we'd soon release to the world. Are you scared? I asked Jason. Terrified, he admitted. But also, relieved. I've been carrying this secret for 5 years. Part of me is glad it's finally ending. Even if it ends with prison? Even then. He looked at me. Thank you, Chloe. For not running. For believing this mattered enough to risk everything. Thank you for showing me that some things are worth risking everything for. We sat in companionable silence, two people who'd met by accident and formed an unlikely alliance, preparing to walk into the fire together. Tomorrow, we'd face Maxwell Sterling. Tomorrow, we'd expose the truth. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for just a few hours, we had peace. The morning of the conference, I woke up to my phone buzzing with a message from an unknown number. Don't go to the conference. Sterling has federal agents waiting. This is your last chance to walk away. A friend. I showed it to Jason while we prepared in the safe house. He read it, then handed the phone back without comment. Could be Sterling trying to scare us off, I said. Could be someone genuinely trying to help. He adjusted his tie, the same confident CEO look he'd worn to Harmon's gala, except now there was steel beneath the polish. Doesn't matter. We're going anyway. At 10 a.m., we arrived at the Grandview Hotel. The lobby was packed with art security professionals, men and women in expensive suits, exchanging business cards and discussing the latest technology in vault systems and surveillance. Everyone was buzzing about Sterling's press release, about the scandal that had rocked Meridian Art International. They were talking about Jason like he was a ghost. A cautionary tale. A criminal who'd been hiding in plain sight. He walked through them with his head high, and I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The main conference hall was set up auditorium style, with a stage at the front and rows of seats filling rapidly. Maxwell Sterling stood near the stage, holding court with a group of executives, looking every bit the conquering hero. When he saw Jason, his smile widened. Mr. Ruiz, Sterling called out, his voice carrying across the room. How bold of you to show your face here. The room went silent. Every head turned toward us. Jason walked forward calmly, stopping a few feet from Sterling. Mr. Sterling. I appreciate the invitation, even if it wasn't direct. I'm afraid you're not welcome at this conference, Sterling said smoothly. Given the allegations against you, I'll have to ask you to leave. Security. 2 men in dark suits moved toward us from opposite sides of the room. Not hotel security, federal agents, judging by their earpieces and the bulges under their jackets. This was it. The moment everything either came together or fell apart. Actually, Jason said loudly, his voice projecting to every corner of the room, I'm not here to attend the conference. I'm here to make a statement. Sterling's smile faltered. I don't think. 5 years ago, my sister was murdered for trying to expose corruption in the art world. Jason's voice was steady, powerful, commanding attention. Her name was Rebecca Ruiz. She was an art restorer who discovered a forgery ring operating out of Castellane Galleries in London. When she tried to report it, she was killed. The people responsible were never charged because they had money, power, and protection. The room was utterly silent now. Even the federal agents had paused. After her death, I made a choice, Jason continued. If the legal system wouldn't deliver justice, I would. I spent 5 years recovering stolen artwork and returning it to its rightful owners. Not for profit, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. Yes, I broke laws. Yes, I forged documents and created replicas. But every piece I took was stolen first, by dictators, criminals, and corrupt collectors who used art as a tool for money laundering and tax evasion. This is absurd, Sterling interjected. You're a thief trying to justify. And you're a criminal trying to protect your operation, Jason shot back. He pulled out his phone. In 30 seconds, every major news outlet and law enforcement agency will receive documentation of your activities, Mr. Sterling. Your deals with organized crime. Your role in facilitating the sale of stolen artwork. Your systematic protection of collectors who acquired pieces through illegal means. All of it, backed by 5 years of evidence. Sterling's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Jason looked at his phone. 20 seconds. The federal agents were now moving with purpose, speaking urgently into their radios. But they weren't moving toward Jason, they were surrounding Sterling. What is this? Sterling demanded. One of the agents stepped forward, showing his badge. Mr. Sterling, we've been investigating your operations for 6 months based on an anonymous tip. If Mr. Ruiz's evidence is legitimate, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. Jason's phone buzzed. The files just went live. Check your devices, everyone. See for yourselves what Maxwell Sterling has been protecting. Across the room, phones started buzzing and chiming. People pulled out their devices, reading, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to outrage. I watched it happen in real time, Sterling's carefully constructed reputation crumbling as the truth spread through the conference like wildfire. This is a setup. Sterling shouted. Ruiz is a criminal. He's manipulating evidence to save himself. Then explain the testimony from your own employees, one of the federal agents said, reading from his phone. Multiple sources confirming that you knowingly facilitated the protection of stolen artwork. That you took payments from collectors with known ties to organized crime. That you threatened anyone who tried to expose these activities. Sterling's face had gone from pale to red. I want my lawyer. Now. As the agents began escorting Sterling from the room, he turned to Jason with pure hatred in his eyes. You think you've won? You're still going to prison. You're still a thief. I know, Jason said calmly. But at least I'll go to prison knowing I did the right thing. Can you say the same? Sterling was led away, still protesting, still demanding his lawyer. The conference hall erupted into chaos, people shouting questions, arguing about what they just witnessed, frantically reading through the evidence Jason had released. And then someone started clapping. It was a woman in her 60s, standing near the back of the room. Then another person joined her. And another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding, not for Sterling's downfall, but for Jason's confession. For his honesty. For his courage. I felt tears pricking my eyes. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd actually done it. But then I saw the federal agents turning toward Jason, and reality crashed back down. Mr. Ruiz, one of them said, approaching with handcuffs. I'm afraid we still need to take you into custody. You've confessed to multiple felonies. I understand, Jason said, offering his wrists. I'm prepared to face the consequences of my actions. Wait, I said, stepping forward. My voice shook but held. I was involved too. I helped with the Harmon heist. I knew what Mr. Ruiz was doing. If you're arresting him, you need to arrest me as well. Jason's head snapped toward me. Chloe, no. She was coerced, Jason told the agents quickly. She's a young intern who was manipulated by her supervisor. She shouldn't be held responsible. I wasn't coerced, I interrupted. I made my choice. I knew the risks, and I chose to help anyway because I believed it was right. The agent looked between us, clearly uncertain. Then another voice spoke up. Agent Morrison, if I may. An older man in an expensive suit stepped forward, someone I recognized from Jason's files as Director Clark from the FBI's art crime team. I've been reviewing Mr. Ruiz's evidence, Director Clark said. His documentation has helped us identify over 30 major cases of art theft and fraud. The paintings he recovered have an estimated value of over $2 billion. While his methods were illegal, his information is invaluable. What are you suggesting? Agent Morrison asked. I'm suggesting that Mr. Ruiz might be more useful to us as a cooperating witness than as a defendant. His knowledge of the criminal networks operating in the art world is extensive. With his cooperation, we could dismantle operations that have been running for decades. Jason stared at Director Clark. You're offering me a deal? I'm offering you an opportunity to continue your work, legally this time. As a consultant to the FBI. You help us recover stolen artwork and expose corruption, and in exchange, we'll recommend reduced charges, possibly probation instead of prison time. And Chloe. Ms. Baxter appears to have been a minor participant for a short period. Given her cooperation and her testimony against Sterling, I see no reason to pursue charges. I felt like I couldn't breathe. We weren't going to prison. We were being offered a second chance. Jason looked at me, and I saw hope warring with disbelief in his eyes. What do you think? I think your sister would want you to keep fighting, I said. Just maybe with a badge this time. He smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time since this nightmare began. Then I accept your offer, Director Clark. On one condition. What's that? Chloe comes with me. She's part of this operation now. She's earned her place. Director Clark looked at me appraisingly. Do you even have a degree in art history or criminal justice? I'm working on it, I said. But I'm a fast learner, and I care about this work more than anything. He considered for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But you're both on probation. One wrong move, one violation, and the deal is off. Understood. Understood, we said in unison. As the chaos of the conference continued around us, Sterling being led away, journalists frantically making calls, security professionals debating what they'd witnessed, Jason and I stood together, alive and free and impossibly, miraculously victorious. We did it, I whispered. You did it, Jason corrected. Your plan, your courage, your refusal to give up. This victory belongs to you, Chloe. But it wasn't just my victory. It was ours. Together, we'd faced impossible odds and somehow found a way through. The darkness had lifted. And finally, after 5 years of fighting alone, Jason wasn't alone anymore. Neither was I. 6 months later, I stood in front of a private estate in the Hamptons, wearing a wire and trying not to throw up from nerves. You've got this, Jason's voice crackled through my earpiece. Just like we practiced. Easy for you to say, I muttered. You're sitting in a surveillance van eating donuts while I'm about to walk into a mansion owned by a Russian oligarch with suspected ties to organized crime. I'm eating a bagel, actually. And you're not alone. We have 12 agents positioned around the property. Director Clark is monitoring from headquarters, and I'm watching your every move. You're as safe as you can be. That was somewhat comforting. Somewhat. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. After the conference, Jason and I had become unlikely celebrities in the art world, the whistleblowers who'd exposed Maxwell Sterling's corruption and agreed to work with the FBI to recover stolen artwork. Sterling himself was awaiting trial on multiple charges, his company dissolved, his reputation destroyed. Jason's deal with the FBI had included probation, community service, and mandatory work as a consultant on art theft cases. I'd been cleared of charges entirely and offered a position as a junior analyst on Director Clark's team, pending completion of my degree, which I was now finishing online while working full-time. It wasn't the life I'd imagined 6 months ago. It was better. We'd spent the past half year dismantling criminal networks, recovering stolen pieces, and working legitimate cases that actually made a difference. No more sneaking around. No more forged paperwork. Everything by the book, everything legal. Well, mostly legal. The FBI had a surprisingly flexible interpretation of undercover work. Which brought me to today, Operation Nightingale, our biggest case yet. Dmitry Volkov, Russian billionaire and suspected arms dealer, had a Caravaggio in his private collection, The Taking of Christ, stolen from a monastery in Malta 30 years ago and presumed lost. An anonymous tip, probably from one of Jason's old contacts, had confirmed its location, and we'd been planning this recovery for 3 months. The plan was simple. I'd pose as an art insurance appraiser, gain access to Volkov's collection under the pretense of updating his policy, verify the Caravaggio's authenticity, and plant a tracking device on the frame. Once we had confirmation, the FBI would obtain a warrant and execute a proper search and seizure. Simple. Legal. Safe. Except nothing involving Jason ever stayed simple for long. I rang the doorbell, and a man the size of a refrigerator answered. Name: Chloe Baxter, from Pinnacle Art Insurance. Mr. Volkov is expecting me. He checked a tablet, grunted, and stepped aside. Follow me. The interior of the estate was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire with more money than taste. Marble everything, gold accents, and enough artwork to stock a small museum. I recognized several pieces from Jason's old target lists, paintings that had disappeared from auctions or been sold through suspicious channels. Volkov met me in his gallery, a climate-controlled room with museum-quality lighting and enough security cameras to make me nervous. He was in his 50s, powerfully built, with cold eyes that assessed me like I was a commodity to be evaluated. Ms. Baxter, he said with a thick accent. You are younger than I expected. I'm very thorough, I said, channeling every ounce of confidence Jason had taught me. Pinnacle only employs the best. Of course. He gestured to the walls. My collection. Insurance company wants updated valuations, yes. Exactly. This shouldn't take more than an hour. I moved through the room systematically, photographing pieces, taking notes, acting like a professional appraiser. Jason's voice in my ear guided me. Third wall, second painting from the left. That should be it. I approached the painting, a dramatic scene of Christ's arrest, rendered in Caravaggio's signature style with intense shadows and emotional depth. My breath caught. It was real. After 30 years, the taking of Christ had been found. Beautiful, isn't it? Volkov said, appearing at my shoulder. I acquired it from private collector in Cyprus. All documentation is legitimate. I'm sure it is, I said, pulling out my specialized camera, which concealed both a high-resolution scanner and the tracking device Jason had designed. May I examine it more closely? Of course. I moved closer, using the camera to photograph the painting while simultaneously deploying the tracker. It attached magnetically to the back of the frame, invisible unless you knew to look for it. All set, I said, stepping back. This is an exquisite piece. The insurance company will need additional documentation for something of this value. I'm afraid I have confession to make, Ms. Baxter. My blood ran cold. I'm sorry. Volkov smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You are not from Pinnacle Art Insurance. That company does not exist. And you, he pulled out his phone, showing me a photograph of myself at the Sterling conference, standing next to Jason. You're the young woman who helped expose Maxwell Sterling. Jason, I whispered into my mic, we have a problem. I know, his voice came back tense. We're coming in. Stay calm. Volkov circled me like a predator. When I heard that Jason Ruiz was working with FBI, I wondered if he would come for my collection. So I set trap. Anonymous tip about Caravaggio, waiting to see who would take bait. Mr. Volkov, I don't know what you're talking about. Please. Do not insult my intelligence. He pulled out a gun, a small elegant pistol that looked entirely too comfortable in his hand. Here is what will happen. You will call your FBI friends and tell them to stand down. Then you will walk out of here, and we will forget this unpleasant business. Refuse and... He didn't need to finish the sentence. My mind raced. The FBI was minutes away, but minutes might be too long. Volkov had a gun, security throughout the house, and no reason to let me leave alive once this was over. I needed to stall. "You're going to shoot me in your own gallery?" I asked, channeling Jason's calm under pressure. "That seems messy. Blood is terrible for artwork." Volkov laughed. "You have courage. I respect this. But courage will not save you." "Maybe not. But the dozen federal agents surrounding your property will." His smile faltered. "Bluff. Is it? Check your security feeds. Or don't. Either way, you have about 90 seconds before they breach every entrance to this house." It was a complete lie. The FBI needed my signal to confirm the painting's location before they could move, but Volkov didn't know that. He moved to a security panel, keeping the gun trained on me, and pulled up camera feeds. His expression darkened as he saw figures moving into position around his property. "You brought army," he said. "I brought justice." I was backing toward the door slowly, calculating distances. "That Caravaggio was stolen from a monastery. It belongs in Malta, not in your private collection. Everything I have, I earned. By selling weapons to warlords? By laundering money through art purchases? You're a criminal, Mr. Volkov. And today that ends." His finger tightened on the trigger, and I saw my life flash before my eyes. My childhood, my dad leaving, years of struggling, meeting Jason, everything that had led to this moment. Then the door burst open. Jason came through first, moving faster than I'd ever seen him move, tackling Volkov before he could fire. The gun went off, the bullet hitting a priceless Monet on the opposite wall, and then the room was filled with FBI agents shouting commands. I stumbled backward, my legs giving out, and found myself sitting on the floor while chaos erupted around me. It took less than 30 seconds to subdue Volkov. Professional, efficient, exactly as planned, except for the part where I'd nearly died. Jason pulled me to my feet, his hands checking me for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Did he?" "I'm fine," I managed, though I was shaking. "I'm okay." "You scared the hell out of me," he said, and I realized he was shaking too, when I heard him pull the gun. "But you came. You all came." I looked around at the agents securing the scene, photographing evidence, carefully removing the Caravaggio from the wall. "We got it. We actually got it." Director Clark appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Baxter, are you all right?" "Yes, sir. The painting is authentic. Volkov confirmed he acquired it illegally. And I got him on recording admitting to weapons trafficking." Clark's eyebrows rose. "You did." I tapped the wire I was wearing. "The FBI employs the best, remember?" He actually smiled. "Good work. Both of you." He looked at Jason. Though entering the scene before we gave the signal was reckless. "She was in danger," Jason said simply. "I don't follow protocol when someone I care about is at risk." The way he said it, "someone I care about," made my heart skip. Clark sighed. "We'll discuss your tendency toward heroics later. For now, let's secure this scene and get that Caravaggio back where it belongs." 2 hours later, Jason and I sat in the FBI van, watching as Volkov was led away in handcuffs and the Caravaggio was carefully loaded into an armored transport vehicle. 6 months ago, I was a broke intern fetching coffee, I said. Now I'm recovering stolen masterpieces and getting held at gunpoint by Russian oligarchs. How is this my life? Jason laughed, a real genuine laugh that I'd heard more frequently in recent months. "You're a natural at this. Director Clark told me you're already being considered for advanced training." He did. "You're brilliant, Chloe. You see patterns others miss. You stay calm under pressure. You have instincts that can't be taught." He looked at me seriously. "You're going to have an incredible career with the FBI. With or without me." "Why would it be without you?" "Because my probation ends in 6 months. After that, I'll be a free man. No more required consulting, no more supervised operations. I could walk away from all of this." The thought of Jason leaving, of working these cases without him, made my chest ache. "Would you? Walk away?" He was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, I would have said yes. I was tired, burned out, ready to disappear and live a quiet life somewhere remote. But now. He turned to look at me. "Now I have a reason to stay." The work. I asked, though I suspected, hoped, he meant something else. The work. The team. You. He said it simply, honestly. Working with you these past 6 months has reminded me why I started this in the first place. Not revenge. Not grief. But the genuine desire to make things right. You've given me back something I thought I'd lost. What's that? Hope. I felt tears pricking my eyes. Jason. I know this is complicated. I know I was your boss, that I brought you into a world of crime, that our relationship started in the most unethical way possible. He smiled ruefully. But somewhere along the way, you became the most important person in my life. And when I thought Volkov might hurt you, I realized that I'd burned down the entire world before I'd let anything happen to you. That's terrifyingly romantic, I said, my voice shaking. I'm terrifyingly dramatic, he agreed. It's part of my charm. I laughed through tears, and suddenly he was closer, his hand cupping my face with heartbreaking gentleness. Chloe Baxter, would you consider, very carefully, with full knowledge of how complicated this would be, pursuing something with me? Something real, something honest, something that isn't built on secrets and crimes. Something legal? I teased. Painfully legal. The most legitimate relationship in FBI history. I thought about everything we'd been through, the fear, the danger, the impossible odds we'd overcome together. I thought about how he'd saved my life today, how I'd saved his 6 months ago at the conference. How we'd become partners in every sense of the word. Yes, I said. I would very much consider that. He kissed me then, soft and careful and full of promise, while federal agents worked around us and the Caravaggio began its journey home. It wasn't how I'd imagined my life would go, but it was better than anything I could have planned. We'd started as intern and CEO, become thieves and whistleblowers, and now we were something entirely new, partners, working to make the world a little more just, one recovered masterpiece at a time. And somehow, impossibly, we'd found something worth more than all the stolen art in the world. We'd found each other. 3 months after the Volkov operation, I stood in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, surrounded by hundreds of people who'd gathered for a very special unveiling. Jason stood beside me, his hand warm in mine, both of us wearing visitor badges that identified us as special guests of the museum. It was surreal, being here legally, openly, celebrated rather than hunted. The museum director, a dignified woman named Dr. van der Berg, stood at a podium in front of a curtain display, addressing the crowd in Dutch before switching to English. Today, we celebrate the return of a masterpiece that has been missing for over 80 years, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Johannes Vermeer's girl with a pearl earring was stolen during World War II and lost to the world. Thanks to the tireless work of international law enforcement and dedicated individuals who refused to let stolen art remain in criminal hands, this painting has finally come home. The curtain dropped and there it was, the Vermeer we'd stolen from Vincent Harmon's penthouse nearly a year ago, now properly restored, authenticated, and displayed where millions of people could see it. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. People wept openly at the sight of the painting they thought they'd never see again. Jason's hand tightened around mine, and when I looked at him, I saw tears on his cheeks. She would have loved this, he whispered. I know, I said, squeezing his hand. Rebecca would be so proud of you. We'd made sure of it. Every painting Jason had recovered over 5 years, 23 in total, had been returned to museums, galleries, and rightful owners. The Vermeer was the last one, the crown jewel of his operation, and watching it return home felt like closing a chapter that had defined both our lives. After the ceremony, Dr. van der Berg approached us personally. Mr. Ruiz, Ms. Baxter, thank you for attending. And thank you for your role in recovering this masterpiece. The art world owes you an immense debt. We were just doing what was right, Jason said. More than that. You risked everything to correct an injustice. That takes courage most people don't have. She smiled warmly. The painting will have a permanent plaque acknowledging everyone involved in its recovery, including both of your names. That's not necessary, I started. It's essential, she interrupted gently. Future generations should know that there are people willing to fight for what matters. Your story, the truth of it, deserves to be told. That evening, Jason and I walked along Amsterdam's canals, the city lights reflecting on the water like scattered jewels. We decided to stay an extra few days, to decompress after months of intense FBI work, and to finally take something resembling a vacation. "Can I tell you something crazy?" I said as we stopped on a bridge, looking out at the historic buildings lining the canal. "Always. A year ago, I was a broke intern who thought her life would be an endless cycle of debt and meaningless jobs. I had no purpose, no direction, no idea who I was supposed to be." I looked at him. "And then I saw you steal a painting, and everything changed." Jason laughed. "That's one way to meet your life partner, catching them in the middle of a felony." "Life partner?" I raised an eyebrow. "That's a pretty serious term." "Is it too soon?" He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around my waist. "Because I'm pretty sure I fell in love with you the moment you decided to investigate me instead of running away. Any sane person would have run. You dove headfirst into danger because you needed to know the truth. That's when I knew you were extraordinary." My heart was racing. "You love me." "Desperately. Completely. In a way that probably violates several FBI workplace conduct policies." He smiled. "I know it's complicated. I know we have a lot to figure out. But Chloe, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You gave me back my purpose, my hope, my belief that people can actually make a difference." "Jason," my voice caught. "I love you too. Even when you're being dramatic and reckless and making me accessory to art theft." "Former art theft," he corrected. "I'm completely reformed now. Painfully legal, remember." "The most boring criminal in history," I teased. He kissed me then, soft and deep and full of promise, while Amsterdam sparkled around us and the future stretched out ahead like an unwritten story. When we finally broke apart, he said, "So what happens now?" "We go back to New York, keep working cases, recover more stolen art." "I think so. Director Clark mentioned a case in Tokyo, a missing hokusai. And there's that Monet that disappeared from a private collection in Miami." I leaned against him. "Plus I need to finish my degree, and you need to complete your probation, and we should probably figure out if we're going to keep living separately or move in together," he suggested. "That's a big step. We've stolen art together, faced down armed criminals together, and exposed international corruption together. I think we can handle sharing an apartment." I laughed. "When you put it that way, it seems almost reasonable." "Almost," he agreed. "So is that a yes?" I thought about it, about building a life with Jason, about waking up next to him every morning, about being partners in every sense of the word. A year ago, I would have said it was too fast, too complicated, too risky. But I'd learned something in the past year. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. "Yes," I said. "Let's do it. Let's build something real together." His smile was brighter than all the lights of Amsterdam combined. 1 year later, I stood in front of a lecture hall at NYU, looking out at 80 undergraduate students who'd signed up for Art, Crime, and Cultural Heritage, a new course I'd been invited to teach as an adjunct professor while continuing my work with the FBI. "Art theft isn't just about stealing pretty paintings," I told them. "It's about erasing history, destroying cultural heritage, and allowing criminals to profit from humanity's greatest achievements. But it's also about something more hopeful, the people who dedicate their lives to recovering what's been lost and returning it to where it belongs." I clicked to the next slide, a photo of the Vermeer in the Rijksmuseum, surrounded by visitors. This painting was stolen 80 years ago. For decades, people assumed it was gone forever. But it wasn't. Someone refused to give up. Someone believed it could be found. And because of that belief, millions of people can now experience this masterpiece. A hand went up in the back. "Professor Baxter, is it true you used to work with Jason Ruiz? The guy who stole art to return it to museums?" I smiled. "I don't just work with him. I married him." The class erupted in whispers and excited murmurs. I held up my left hand, showing the simple gold band I'd worn for 3 months now. "Mr. Ruiz and I believe that fighting for justice sometimes means taking unconventional paths. He made mistakes, broke laws, operated outside the system, but he also recovered over $2 billion worth of stolen artwork and helped dismantle criminal networks that had operated for decades. The FBI recognized that his knowledge and skills were more valuable outside a prison cell than inside one." "So crime pays?" someone asked. "No," I said firmly. Crime has consequences. Mr. Ruiz spent a year on probation, completed thousands of hours of community service, and will spend the rest of his life working to make amends for his actions. But redemption is real. People can change, can choose to use their skills for good rather than harm. That's the lesson I want you to take from this course, that it's never too late to do the right thing. After class, I gathered my materials and headed to the FBI field office where Jason and I now worked as co-consultants on international art crime cases. Our latest investigation involved a theft ring operating out of Eastern Europe, and we've been tracking their movements for months. Jason was waiting in our shared office. Yes, the FBI had given us an actual office, complete with our names on the door, reviewing surveillance footage. "How was teaching?" he asked, pulling me down for a kiss. "Exhausting. Exhilarating. The students asked about you, of course. My criminal past is apparently excellent PR for your academic career." "Former criminal past," I corrected, echoing his words from Amsterdam. "You're completely reformed now." "The most boring FBI consultant in history," he said with a grin. I laughed, settling into my chair and pulling up my own case files. This was our life now, teaching, investigating, recovering stolen art through legal channels, and occasionally giving interviews about the importance of cultural heritage protection. We testified at Maxwell Sterling's trial, watching him get sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. We'd helped return paintings to over 30 museums worldwide. We'd trained dozens of FBI agents in art crime investigation. And somewhere in the middle of all that, we'd built a life together. Our apartment in Brooklyn was small but filled with art, not stolen pieces, but prints and photographs we'd collected from our travels. We had a cat named Vermeer who knocked things off tables with alarming regularity. We hosted dinner parties with our FBI colleagues and my former NYU classmates. We were normal, boring, and completely happy. "Hey," Jason said, interrupting my thoughts. "Director Clark wants to see us. Says he has a new case." "What kind of case?" "The kind that requires our specific expertise." His eyes gleamed with excitement. "Apparently there's a Rembrandt missing from a private collection in Singapore, and the owner has ties to human trafficking networks." I felt that familiar surge of adrenaline, the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of knowing we'd be fighting for something that mattered. "When do we leave?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning. Think you can clear your schedule?" I looked at my calendar, lectures to reschedule, meetings to postpone, deadlines to juggle. A year ago, I would have stressed about the chaos. Now, I just felt excited. For art and justice? Always. Jason smiled at me across our shared office, and I saw everything we'd been through reflected in his eyes, the fear, the danger, the impossible odds we'd overcome. But I also saw love, partnership, and a future filled with purpose. We'd started as intern and CEO, become criminals and whistleblowers, and now we were something even better, partners in every sense of the word, using our skills to make the world a little more just, one recovered masterpiece at a time. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It was better. And as we gathered our materials and prepared for our next mission, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest art isn't hanging in a museum. Sometimes it's the life you build with someone who sees the world the way you do, who believes in justice, fights for what's right, and refuses to give up even when the odds seem impossible. I'd found my masterpiece. And his name was Jason Ruiz. Epilogue. So that's my story. The story of how a broke intern discovered her CEO's secret life as an art thief and somehow ended up marrying him, working for the FBI, and recovering stolen masterpieces around the world. I know what you're thinking. It sounds too crazy to be real. Trust me, I lived it and I still can't believe it sometimes. But here's what I learned from this whole experience. Life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. Sometimes the people we're taught to fear turn out to be the ones who change our lives for the better. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing means breaking all the rules. Jason's sister, Rebecca, never got to see justice for the corruption she tried to expose. But her legacy lives on in every painting we recover, every criminal network we dismantle, every piece of stolen history we return to its rightful place. That's what this has all been about. Not revenge, not glory, but the simple belief that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. So let me ask you, the people who've stuck with me through this entire wild journey, what did you learn from this story? What would you have done in my position? Would you have reported Jason immediately, or would you have done what I did, dove headfirst into danger because you needed to know the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspectives, your honest opinions about whether Jason was a hero or a villain, whether I made the right choices or completely lost my mind. And speaking of opinions, what do you think of the voice I'm using to tell this story? Too casual? Too dramatic? Just right? Your feedback helps me tell better stories, so don't hold back. Give me your brutal honesty. If you enjoyed this journey, if you stayed with me through stolen paintings, dangerous heists, armed confrontations, and unexpected romance, please subscribe to the channel. I've got more stories like this, more adventures, more impossible situations that somehow ended with hope and justice. Because that's what life is really about, isn't it? Not the perfect plan, not the safe path, but the courage to take risks, to fight for what matters, and to believe that even when the world seems irredeemably corrupt, there are still people willing to stand up and make it better. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about art, about justice, about stories that matter. And remember, the next time you see a painting in a museum, think about all the people who fought to put it there. The artists who created it, the curators who preserved it, and sometimes, just sometimes, the unlikely heroes who risked everything to bring it home. Until next time, this is Chloe Baxter Ruiz, reminding you that the greatest masterpiece you'll ever create is your own life. Make it count.